Hi, I'm Miko Pellet, and I'm speaking to you from Palestine House of Freedom here in Washington, D.C. Tonight, I'm once again with Haitham Quraishi to talk about, or another chapter in our Mosaic series, the history and the histories and the stories of Palestine. And Christmas is upon us.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people don't know that there are different dates for Christmas for different sects within Christianity. And so that's one thing that we want to discuss. But I want to tell you a little anecdote. So a few years ago during Christmas, I posted one of these beautiful pieces by Sliman Mansour that shows the Holy Family and Jesus as Palestinian.
Yeah.
And I got like a gazillion comments from Zionists about how it's not true and Jesus was a Jew, and so they went nuts. And ever since then, kind of just for fun, I do it again and again and again. This time, it was yesterday, I tweeted that Jesus was a Palestinian, as, by the way, was the biblical King David, because he's from Bethlehem.
Okay.
And Bethlehem is part of Palestine. Within 24 hours, I don't know, there's like, again, comments from here to I don't know where.
You did something right.
So exactly, but there's something about the Palestinianness of Christianity that's really bothers the Zionists. I can't understand it, but I think it's worth talking about the Palestinianness of Christianity. And remember that it is a religion that began in Palestine and still exists in Palestine. And some of the different Christian groups and sects and subsects are still there in Palestine, in Jerusalem, in different parts of the country. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So, Christianity, just like Judaism and Islam, it really does take root in the Middle East, in the Levant, not Paris, like many might think, or Bethlehem, Pennsylvania,
Right.
So in terms of Christianity as well, starting in the Roman days, which is a lot of the biblical stories surrounding Jesus, but even historically away from the biblical days, the idea of Christianity or the spread of it did take place in the Roman period, going from the 1st and 2nd century. And in this time, Rome did not recognize this religion. It was some heretical religion that sprung out of nowhere. And basically had people dodging military draft because basically they were losing soldiers. So that's why it was pretty much outlawed. And there were a few people that did adopt the Christian faith, early Jews of the land that followed Christ and his message, and many others who might have been pagan before. And because of the persecution by the Roman Empire, it led to a lot of people who we would consider hermits today, looking for an escape route, looking for somewhere to still practice their faith and even spread it. And so that's where you get a lot of the early folklore and later monastic traditions that you see, especially in Palestine and neighboring areas.
Right. And so, and again, we discussed this before in previous conversations, that the name Palestine was used to describe that part of the Levant, that part of Western Asia, going back to the pharaohs and the Greeks. And so we're talking about a time, the use of the name has been in place by then a very long time.
Yeah.
And so this whole myth that somehow Yasser Arafat invented Palestine in 1967 or something,
Sure.
That's the kind of arguments you hear. But a lot of and we talked about the difference between the Eastern Orthodox and the kind of more European Catholic and so forth. And the European Christmas is December 25th. The Eastern Orthodox, which is the majority of the people in Palestine, or the Christians in Palestine, celebrate January 7th.
Yes.
So what's that all about?
So the idea for January 7th, that really follow, or what many Orthodox Christians, especially in the East, whether it's Coptic, Ethiopian, Syriac churches, they would follow January 7th because this follows the Julian calendar. So that's a much older one based on the time of Julius Caesar, hence the name Julian. I believe this is around the 1st century that this calendar was really like widespread in areas that were controlled by Rome and later the Byzantines. The idea of December 25th more coincided what we call that's called the Gregorian calendar. And that was more to overlap or overshadow some pagan holidays or traditions that were in Europe, roughly, I would say, between like the 15 and 1600s. That would have coincided with the festival of Yule.
Yeah. So January 7th, that date precedes the December 25th one.
Yeah, so the Julian calendar would have been older than the
Right.
Gregorian calendar, yes.
And I'm wondering, how was January 7th determined? Does anybody know?
Not many people quite know how even like Christmas was established as the exact day, because some people might argue, oh, Jesus was born in the summertime, might have been born in July. So some people might base it on when they think epiphanies happened, where the determination that Jesus was divine. Some people mark the time of his baptism. So different traditions within Christianity would use similar reasons like that.
Now, just to make it clear, so figures like the biblical King David, all the way to even Jesus, there's really no historical data that proves they ever existed, right? Historical data. I'm not talking about theology.
Yeah, so outside of theology, David is a lot more difficult to trace. Jesus, the sources are very small, but I believe one of the accounts we might have from a non-biblical source may have been, I believe there was a Roman source that realized there was some interesting man that somehow his message reached some people, and it seemed like this was a significant person.
And
so
it could have been John the Baptist, too.
It could have been John the Baptist.
Because he was more of a historical, because at that time there were a lot of sects, particularly in the desert.
Yes.
And so
there
were
were
all these different sects in the desert, and that's where we have all those scrolls, the
yeah,
Dead Sea Scrolls, and so on.
Even the idea with crucifixion, crucifixion was just, it wasn't specific to these stories of Jesus or his disciples. It was a form of punishment or like execution generally all around Rome. So it wasn't specific to a person. It was generally like a form of punishment.
Yeah, and we talk about this, and I can't help think of the movie The Life of Brian, the Monty Python comedy, The Life of Brian, with the crucifixion and all that, but and the sects in the desert and so on. But so let's move further a little bit. So today, we talked about this earlier. There's the Greek Orthodox Church, which really is the largest one in Palestine. But then there are, like you said, another version of it, which is considered the Eastern Orthodox Church, which includes the Armenians and some of the others.
Yeah.
So could you talk about that a little bit? Who are these?
Yeah, so some of the earliest churches, what they call the churches of the East or the Oriental Orthodox churches, they would include some of the earliest places to adopt Christianity, like Armenia, which Armenia was the first country to declare Christianity their state religion, a few years before Constantine and Rome did, or Constantinople did. Then you also have older churches, like you have the Coptic churches in Egypt. You have the Ethiopian Orthodox. And then you have the Syriac or Assyrian churches that you find between Iraq and Syria today.
So these are all Orthodox, but they differ in some way in their theology?
They might differ on the characteristics of Jesus, his divinity. but who they would like report to in a sense as well
Right.
with their higher ups.
Right, in the hierarchy of the church.
In the hierarchy of the church.
Another story, which is not about Christmas, but when I learned that there were so many denominations, I was in Palestine, I was in Jerusalem, on the Easter that falls, every few years, Easter falls on the same day for all the denominations. And I didn't realize that they had different days for Easter. So they all have different days, and every, I think, 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, or 5 years, they fall on the same day.
Yeah.
And I was there, and me and some friends went throughout Jerusalem, throughout the Old City and around it, from church to church. And the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is, of course, the kind of the center of Christianity in Jerusalem,
Yes.
it was unbelievable because you saw, the Greek Orthodox have a huge space. The Armenians are a little bit smaller. The Catholics are a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
The Syriac ones have like a square meter on the floor. The Ethiopians are on the roof. And there were thousands and thousands of people climbing up the stairs and going up and down. I didn't realize that there were so many, and I didn't realize they had different dates for Easter.
And you can imagine like the coordination that it would take. This is and these denominations, especially within Jerusalem, would follow the idea of status quo, where each person has to kind of respect each other's space. If you move anything within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre without permission of all the other denominations, you're going to cause a huge problem.
And this was determined by Salahuddin, I think, right? The peace was made. So
this was, mainly under Salahuddin, and then it was later reinforced again in the Ottoman period.
And there's a
ladder. Yeah, there's a ladder in that time, and the reason I bring up the Ottoman period is because that's when that ladder showed its face. It was a mason that he was doing some maintenance work, and he just left his ladder there, and then it became an issue of how to remove it, and that became the thing that once I think one of the popes at the time said that the Christianity will unite when this ladder situation is figured out.
Yeah.
So nobody could decide how to move it.
Right.
In a sense.
So going back to this, the story of the Christians in the Holy Land, the Christians in Palestine. Kind of the recent history is very sad because it's diminishing. I mean, there's a very, very small number of Christians left in the Holy Land, right?
Yeah, and one of the things I tend to hear a lot is the one time that I hear Zionists somewhat caring about a Palestinian city like Beit Lahem, which is administered under the Palestinians, the main Beit Lahem under the Palestinian Authority, let's say. Is they'll say, oh, look how the Christian population has dwindled. The 60s, the Christians were the majority, and look what the Muslims did to them.
Right.
But really, the huge decline of Christians in historic Palestine is because of the Nakba and later 1967, especially in '67. Since Jerusalem or East Jerusalem and Beit Lahem and Ramallah were a big part of what became the West Bank, now when you build the wall, when you build the apartheid wall, you're also confiscating and taking away, seizing a lot of their lands that they already have. So you already drop a lot of their economy right there and a lot of their work. And then you restrict them from being able to go to Jerusalem because, for those that don't quite know the geography of where Jerusalem is, Ramallah would be north of it and Beit Lahem would be south of it. So it's a very strategic location in that sense. So especially in Beit Lahem, the settlement expansion and land seizure is very, very aggressive. And this would include even archaeological sites around it, like the Herodian, let's say. Which is just outside of Beit Lahem. And it's just become dangerous for a lot of people, especially if they're from nearby villages. So it's very difficult for Christian communities, whether they have the Israeli citizenship and live in Nasra, let's say, or in the West Bank with a green ID.
Yeah. And of course, refugees went to wherever they went, and many of them were Muslims, and so suddenly Bethlehem and all these other cities became Muslim majority cities, even though they were originally or traditionally considered Christian cities.
Yeah.
Now, so how do the Crusades and the Byzantines and the Eastern Christians, how do all of these relate to each other?
So, in terms of
because the Crusades came after, they're already Christians in the Holy Land.
It was majority. Honestly, Jerusalem was majority Christian up to that point as well.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, the Crusaders, much like today's evangelical Christians, didn't consider the Christians of the Holy Land as real Christians.
Yeah, they didn't really consider them. So a lot of them were killed. A lot of Eastern Christians were killed,
Crusaders too,
or removed entirely. And that disrupted a huge dynamic of earlier Christians in the Holy Land at the time, basically replacing them with Latin Christians from mainly the Franks, from modern day France, taking over, and a lot of their officers, and basically making Jerusalem kind of a blocked off place, like a blocked off island, as part of the territory of the Kingdom of Jerusalem under the Crusader states.
And that's when Jews were prohibited from entering the city.
That's when Jews and Muslims were prohibited from entering the city. Anyone that was there would be slaughtered.
Yeah. Until Salahuddin came. And then it became more tolerant, more free, and so forth.
Yeah, and I think some people now, they might say the story of like now Muslims and Jews would be able to return, but actually when it comes to the Christians, after the Crusades, the ones of the Eastern churches were allowed to return to their roles as priests or bishops in the churches that they worked in before. So those Eastern Christians got to have their jobs back as well.
I see. Because I think all of this, like I said, I didn't know much of this, and people who really don't know much Palestine, I think, don't realize this. And I remember being in Asra once, and you had these American evangelicals handing out flyers, calling on people to convert and commit to Christ, and I thought, you're in Nazareth. You know who came from Nazareth? Do you know who was born in Nazareth?
Yeah.
And the Christians here know a thing or two about Christianity. What are you doing?
It's like you even have American towns named Nazareth.
Exactly. So this whole idea somehow that comes from the West, that they know better about Christianity than the people in the East, and this is true today too.
Yeah.
Where you have this idea that somehow they're not real Christians, and so we need to convert them, and it's okay for them to be killed by the Zionists and so forth.
Yeah. And, it almost made Eastern Christianity seem more tribal than what it was.
What do you mean?
In the sense of, like these people, they speak this language, they're a little bit more backwards here. Just seeing like the average fallah, average like farmer from areas around Bethlehem, for example, and as with the period of enlightenment, we'll say like in the 16 or 1700s, downfalls of monarchy and spread of modern colonialism, it's the superiority in it. In that, some societies in Europe were developing more secular methods of rule, but they still wanted to be able to spread their version of Christianity. And this came in the form of the surveys that they would do, biblical tourism as well, and what we call sacred geography, which is using biblical ideas as historical fact and trying to trace the steps of Jesus and the apostles and try to match events from the Bible to locations today. Maybe removing its Arabic or Aramaic name, let's say, and putting something that matches the biblical story, when either the biblical story doesn't match a real life moment or is much more exaggerated than the true, like, village today.
Right. And that's exactly what the Zionists have been doing.
Yes.
I mean, they've been destroying sites And like you were saying with Herodion and others, they have the wall built in a way that the archaeological sites, that they have access to these archaeological sites, and they can tell the story that they want about these things, about these places. We talked earlier also about Sebastia, and the settlers, Zionist settlers, have been kind of obsessed with Sebastia for a very long time.
Yes.
What is Sebastia? Why is it so important?
So Sebastia, as we know it today, this is a town north of Nablus, located in the West Bank. And Sebastia includes two main portions. There is the town of Sebastia, where all the locals live. It's a town of about 3,200 people. And the archaeological site of Sebastia, where you can see these really cool Roman columns and the amphitheater, and a few remains of some other buildings. But Sebastia, it's the current state it's in really started with the development by King Herod in the first century, and he named it Sebastia in honor of the Emperor Augustus. And later on, there was a temple of Augustus built there too. But this place, just like many other archaeological sites, is very layered, in that the thing that the Zionist movement wants to focus on, especially the settler movements that run the Israeli Antiquities Authority, is the story of biblical Samaria. Before Sebastia was called Sebastia, one of the names you could find was Samaria. And there is a difference of historical Samaria, which might have been a city. It might have been a conglomeration of a few towns around it, as like a city-state or a little kingdom, versus the biblical version, which is more of the focus of a lot of the Antiquities Authority, like I said, using Bible as fact.
Yeah.
Now, it goes with the story of a man known as King Omri. And King Omri is mentioned a lot in the Bible as the founder of Samaria, or the Kingdom of Israel, one of the first kings. But the thing that's really interesting is, now you can find him outside of a biblical context, but what makes it much bigger is the focus on this as a specifically biblical site.
Jewish site.
Specifically biblical Jewish site,
Yeah.
when even in the days of the Israelites, or even the name of the Kingdom of Israel was very pagan, dedicated to, we have the name Isr and then El. El was the supreme god during the Canaanite period, who reigned over multitudes of local gods that you might find, especially in for the Israelites. One of the pagan gods you could find is Yahu or Yahweh. And these areas were dedicated to paganism, to the local gods, versus monotheism that you would find later with the modern idea of Judaism and Christianity and later. But it's the exclusivist focus on the biblical story rather than the multi-layered story, which would include the Canaanites, Israelites, Romans, Hellenization, the Assyrians, and even later these stories of John the Baptist, who local Muslim and Christian tradition believe is buried there.
In Sebastia.
In the town of Sebastia.
Okay.
And, Sebastia was a unique place in that the area where it's believed that John the Baptist or the prophet Yahya in Islam is buried, this was actually a place where both Christians and Muslims used to go worship at the same time. The Ayyubids under Salah ad-Din built the Prophet Yahya Mosque, which was expanded under the Ottoman period, but Christian pilgrims could still come to Sebastia and still worship. And the thing with a lot of, biblical archaeologists, early Orientalists, is that they never quite saw the layers or the diversity of these places, including those of Judaism as well. It was always specifically an image that, okay, these are people from the Bible, and they do such primitive things, versus these celebrations of holidays, feasts, pilgrimage routes, the industries. Sebastia is also very known for apricots. A lot of people might not know that. But with Israeli land seizures and dedicating something under the idea of preservation, you one, you threaten the people that live there. You establish all these settlements around. You seize more land, which affects the economy and culture. You implant fear in the society. And they talk about archaeological preservation, but the archaeological site is under Area C, which is fully under the Israeli military and security, while the town's under Area B, which is Palestinian civil but Israeli security administration. So when people see that, oh, Sebastia's archaeological site needs preservation, the thing is, Palestinians are not allowed to renovate or do maintenance on it. No matter how many funds they could raise to do it, they are physically not allowed to, or they could be shot.
Yeah.
So it's not about preservation, it's about taking more. Similar with the Herodian or Silwan in Jerusalem.
Yeah, and so it seems like, it's interesting, you talked about the Kingdom of Israel and paganism. Even in the Old Testament, the Kingdom of Israel is considered as a kingdom who did not follow the path of the one God.
Yeah.
As opposed to Judea, where they were like, more pious and so on.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it seems like there's the approach to this is Palestine, which, like you said, appreciates all the different layers.
Yeah.
And there's the Zionist and the Christian, evangelical approach, which is no. This is the one that matters, and if we don't find it, then we're just going to pretend that it's true.
Yeah.
And so in Silwan, they decided to build a city of David, even though somebody decided that that's where David was from or something, or that's where he lived.
Yeah.
And there's not a shred of historical proof that he even existed, even though Christian Zionists and Jewish Zionists have been digging, for centuries. So that's the difference in approach, and I think goes very deep into the different sets of values, where the Palestinian approach, or the approach that recognizes Palestine, recognizes the diversity, recognizes the Mosaic, which is the term we decided to call this series, recognizes all the different layers and respects all of them.
And, some people say, it's not, the Palestinians aren't preserving this, even though they can't really. Palestinians, and I've heard this from archaeologists who are based out of Italy, based out of Rome, and similar to maybe excavations they've done in Sicily, the local population is not a fan of it. It's not that they hate history, it's that it'll destroy their lives. Like you are looking for a way in the name of preserving history to displace people, to ethnically cleanse them, to make a park out of it. When maybe maximum you might find some shards, maybe some pottery, maybe. Yeah. But even then, it's not that Palestinians truly hate history. It's that we know the danger historically of biblical archaeology, in its role in displacing us.
Right. And also, I think in many places, the archaeology is part of the life.
Yeah.
It's not separate from it. It's not divided. The Zionists came and they put fences around all the sites, as opposed to allowing it to be part of the fabric of the community in which it exists.
Sure.
Which is much more valuable, of course. It's not like I know there's in Tel Rumeda in Hebron, there's an archaeological site. It's a tell that's been there forever, and the settlers are just. They can't wait to move the fence and take it, and they come in and they use it and they take it, then they pretend it's theirs. And that's it. Now it's sealed off. And so what have we done? What's the virtue of sealing it off and preserving it when the people who lived there and whose ancestors lived there, going back to the days when these sites were not archaeology, life,
they don't benefit from it at all.
They don't benefit, and they can't access it.
They can't, and and they don't fully get to learn about it, like a portion of their history or their land's history. Yeah. It's just. One thing as well with it is with layers of history, or and even archaeology call them strata. Let's say you have a society, you have foundations from the Stone Age or Bronze Age under the Canaanites. You have early history before before monotheism existed. Let's say we'll use Judaism as an example, or even Zionism as a political ideology. You have a history during it, or even if that site was abandoned either through war or drought. the modern foundations of it were still continued being built after. So, hey, maybe we all hate the Romans somehow, but we can't deny that they've built a lot of stuff, including whether monotheistic beliefs like Judaism or later Christianity, if they built something architecturally, it followed a architectural pattern of the overlord above them. Yeah. That's part of the history with it.
And again, going back to Hebron, as you're saying this, I'm thinking you walk through the old city of Hebron, you go to the Ibrahimi Mosque and so on, you see that, exactly what you described, how one layer was built on the foundation of another one, and everything is still alive.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your insight and your knowledge. One of the things that I've been saying is, and we need to end the Zionist destruction of Palestine, because these treasures are not coming back.
Yeah.
Once they're destroyed, once they're gone, they're gone. And the Zionists are on a roll to destroy as much as they can so that they can, somehow prove that they're right. So anyway, thank you all for listening. And this is the Mosaic series. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.